mortgages to prevent another house price bubble. And the Centre for Economics and Business Research is forecasting that house prices will go up by 16% by the end of 2015. Well, joining me now are Matt Griffith, who wrote the IPPR's reports, and Shahan Mohammed, an economist at the CEBR. Gents, nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. Matt, you first. We seem tortured by this issue. On one hand, we want young people to get mortgages. On the other, we don't want the banks to go back to irresponsible lending. How do we square the circle?
Yeah, what's the phrase? Lord make me chase, but not yet. I think it's time for a bit of a more mature debate about lending. And loose lending hasn't really benefited first-time buyers for some time. If you look at the numbers, first-time buyers have been going up pretty much year on year since 1999. So loose lending, on the one hand, has pushed up prices quite sharply, but first-time buyers have lost out to other actors, like investment actors, and because of deposit barriers and other things, they're finding it much harder to get on the first run. We need to think about it in the long run, think about the cycles, and there have been 4 major house price cycles so far. What we need to do is prevent a 5th by keeping reasonable lending policies in place.
Shahan, explain to us this conflict here, this apparent paradox, in that the generation says it can't afford to get a mortgage, and yet house prices are going to go up by 16% by 2015. Something wrong, surely?
That's right, Jeff. There's an endemic shortage of housing on the market at the minute. Currently around 100,000 houses are not being built every year just to keep up with the pace of demand. This year has been a really tough year for the consumer, but in terms of when you want to buy, this is actually the best year to buy houses because we are forecasting around 4 to 5% year-on-year growth in the next 4 years.
So house prices, the average house price now is around what, 160?
175, yeah.
170. Well, that's in England, but if you took the whole of the UK, it would be a bit lower, would it not?
Well, for the UK, it's around 175.
Is it? And at the peak, it was what, nearly 200?
Yeah.
More than.
You're looking at about 5 years to get back to £200,000.
Now, what about that point our reporter made there? Does it matter if house ownership in this country falls? In Germany, I saw some stats saying that house ownership is accounted for by less than 50% of the population, 45%, something like that. Here in the UK, it's 66%. Germany is a perfectly functional, thriving, profitable economy.
Yeah, I think we have a culture that is over-obsessed by owner occupation. It's a very important sector. But one of the problems is that our renting sector really isn't well kitted out for people in their 30s, and there are growing number of people in their 30s who want to settle down and have a family, but they have very short tenure rights, so they could 2 months and they could be out from the street, which is not good if you're looking to send your child to school.
So is it the sense that the rented sector looks mainly at individual single people?
Yeah, and it hasn't really, it's also been quite volatile in its source of finance, so it's been very predicated on capital gain, whereas in Germany you have much more longer-term investment models over 25 years looking at yield plus capital gain, and therefore they're not constantly looking for churn. In the UK it's been different from that. Buy-to-let has been a way to make a lot of money, which means it's added pro-cyclicality to the housing market, which has been a problem for everyone.
Shahan, isn't there an obvious way to solve this, and it's going to happen naturally anyway, and that is intergenerational transfer of wealth? Basically, all those mums and dads sitting out there with houses worth £300,000, £400,000, £500,000, they've paid off the mortgage, they either 1, release some equity and give the cash to their kids, or 2, they perhaps downsize and still give some cash to the kids benefit.
Well, let's put things in perspective. I think over the next 3 or 4 years, you will see banks starting to lend more, just as the natural credit cycle takes its course. The last 2 years, banks have been repairing their balance sheets, being reluctant to lend, and rumours are going around that the banks are going to go into partnership with house builders. The first signs of an increased loosening of lending criteria. To take first-time buyers, the average age of a first-time buyer is around 31. We forecast that to rise close to 40 in the next 10 years.
Really?
Just
You'll be 40 before you buy your first home?
If I'm lucky. So it's really hard times for a first-time buyer, and really it's the only thing that's going to reduce that age gap is if the banks start to lend at an increased rate.
Matt, finally, is there any country in the developed world that is more obsessed with house prices than the UK?
No. And we're not much better for it. I mean, the UK has the highest ratio of mortgage debt to GDP in the world, pretty much. And it's caused a huge amount of pain to our individuals and to the society and our banking sector. So it's time we started thinking something different.
So, would you agree we're just too obsessed with house prices in this country?
Well, I think we've been spoiled with a lot of access to credit, and I think those days of 125% loan to value ratios are well behind us. We're looking at a much more mature housing market going forward.
All right, so Shahan, Matt, many thanks for coming in. We appreciate your time. Well, that's almost all we've time for this evening, but